guys, welcome back to A2D, Agree to Disagree. All right, we are prepping for week 6. And on today's show, we are going to go into a little bit of a different mood here. We are going to talk about our stuff, our lineups, BT's lineups, our leagues, and what's been going on, ad drops, what's going to be affecting us, and kind of see our reactions from people, try to get a little bit more interaction from our guests. So, BT, how you doing, man?
Good, man. And that's what I'm saying. I got a question, a text yesterday from my buddy Michael asking if he should make a trade. Because right now it's not about just start, sits. Yeah, I have some questions with my lineup, especially at quarterback, who I should start, who I should sit. But this is how we're prepping for week 6. These are things that are affecting my lineup. We got questions from your son. We're getting questions from followers who they should start, who they should sit. So we're going to get into those, try to answer as many questions as we can. Starting out though with that trade that I just talked about, my buddy, he just made this trade. What do you think? Alvin Kamara, it's a big trade too. Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, who might get suspended, and DK Metcalf. He's giving up those 3 big names, but in return, he's receiving Christian McCaffrey, who might get going, might get traded, and then he's getting Jalen Waddle and Gabe Davis, who just had a monster game.
Ooh. Okay, so yeah, I was waiting to hear one that doesn't have much risk behind it. I think he wins that trade. So Christian McCaffrey, with the firing of Matt Rule, I've said it. If I said it once, I said it a million times. Matt Rule was holding Christian McCaffrey back. He misused this guy since Matt Rule's been there. I think that Christian's had some injuries, but I think that they were something that could have been rehabbed a little bit differently, a plan to bring him back a little bit quicker. And I think Matt Rule just had this thing, and hey, we need to keep him off the field, and we need to make sure he's healthy going into next year. Fuck next year. You need your best players on the field right now. I think Christian McCaffrey's about to get going. I think that's a great trade. Gabe Davis, we just saw Randy Moss-like numbers on Sunday. So, not saying he's Randy Moss, but he has big playability at any given time. We've talked about Alvin Kamara. We've talked about, Devontae Adams maybe getting suspended. So that's probably, especially for the next 2 or 3 weeks, that's going to give him some W's in that trade alone. So I like that trade for Michael. I think that's a great trade. And, I hope it works out for him. So, but
I agree, man. Yeah, we're in agreement there. Yeah, I think so too. CMC, and even I think he was the trajectory is going up with CMC, and if he gets back to his old form, he personally won me a championship a couple years ago. So CMC is that dude when he's right. So hopefully he gets right. We're in agreement on that trade. He pulled it off, and hopefully it works out for him. I got some questions with my lineup. The biggest one for me in our league, I have a question, dude, and it's like I said on yesterday's show, slim pickings at the quarterback position. If you're trying to start a guy, sit a guy, and got some decisions, and it's bye weeks. We got a lot of guys with bye weeks. Jared Goff's on a bye. Derek Carr's on a bye. So we have some teams on a bye. So if you're looking to stream a quarterback, which guys are, Daniel Jones went off the waivers. Daniel Jones went on waivers in our league. So that's how the quarterback position is in this one. For me, I'm bouncing a couple guys around. I know I got some feedback from our listeners about my flex last week. Most of the input was Zay Jones, and I actually went with him, and it didn't work out. But it's okay. I'm not blaming anybody. It's he had 8 targets, so I mean, anyways, yeah. But didn't work out last week. This week, I'm in need of some assistance at the quarterback spot. Jimmy G against Atlanta, yeah. Trevor Lawrence against Indianapolis, or Carson Wentz tomorrow night against the Chicago Bears. I mean, it's slim pickings for sure. All on the road.
Yeah, I'm out of all those. So I do have a start sits list sitting next to me. I'm always prepared for all that kind of stuff. Trevor Lawrence is my number 1 quarterback on that list. Here's why. Week 2, the Jaguars, they shut him out. I mean, they absolutely destroyed Indy. And they're a tough matchup for Indy, man. Indy and they don't seem right. I mean, their defense, I understand they have a good secondary. They have those 2 corners with Gilmore and Kenny Moore. And I get it. I understand it. That's on the road. But I think that this is going to be a little bit more high scoring of a game. I think Christian Kirk gets going. I think that they're going to pass the ball a little bit more in this game too. You're starting to see Travis Etienne wake up a little bit, and we're going to talk about him here in a second also. But I think they're going to pass a little bit more, man. And I think that we talked about Trevor last week, and it didn't work out last week against Houston. I think he's a guy again. You can start. He scored 21 fantasy points in week 2. Same matchup indoors, and for whatever reason, he plays well against Indy. So he would be the guy that I would play out of all those names. I have Daniel Jones on the list also, only because they're playing Washington, and that's
Baltimore.
I'm sorry, Baltimore, and because I was thinking Carson Wentz, Baltimore, right. And that's teams have been able to throw the ball against them. He also likes to run, and I have a tight end guy that Daniel Bellinger is a very deep sleeper, but out of those, man, Trevor Lawrence is my answer because I think that he's the highest profile name and he has the best chance to get you 20 to 25 points.
And honestly, I don't think I can go with Carson Wentz tomorrow. I just feel like that game against Chicago, I know on paper the Bears matchup, people have been able to kind of score against them. Kirk Cousins is coming off a 20-point game. So I'm thinking maybe Carson Wentz can do it, but he's missing Logan Thomas as tight end. He's missing Jahan Dotson. For me, like with those guys out, I think that I think it's gonna be a low-scoring game with the Bears and the Redskins. I mean the Commanders, whatever the hell. So I think that's gonna be a low-scoring game, and for me, that's kind of why I'm fading him. And it's Jimmy G or Trevor Lawrence for me. And I'll explain my reasoning why I currently have Jimmy G in my lineup. He's projected more. He's got the better matchup on paper. And another reason is the guy I'm going against has George Kittle. And if this happens to be the game that Kittle does, get a touchdown or whatever, if I have Jimmy, then maybe it'll kind of negate that scoring
a little bit.
Exactly. So that has a little something to do. I'm not gonna lie with why I have Jimmy, because when it's that close, and I think it is that close. If Trevor Lawrence is going to get you 20, I think he's going to get you about 20. Jimmy has a chance to throw like 3 touchdowns against Atlanta, man. They're in Atlanta, so there's a chance Atlanta might be able to score a few. I think San Francisco is going to score, 27 to 30 points, something like that. Jimmy might throw 1 or 2 touchdowns. Hopefully 3 if Atlanta can keep pace. But the way San Francisco's defense is, it's not looking like that. So, but yeah, I mean, like the matchup, they're I think the 22nd ranked against the quarterback, so he's got it's almost a green matchup, not quite, but against Atlanta, yeah, that's the reason I'm going with Jimmy G there.
Okay, yeah, no,
now I might bounce back. We'll see what everyone says. Trevor Lawrence or Jimmy G. What do you guys think?
I look at the past, so I even go into last year's stats.
I did too. I looked at Trevor Lawrence versus them, and it's not like they haven't. It hasn't been great. Like he hasn't been bad either. He hasn't had the turnover games, and those are the ones that kind of hurt him. Mm-hmm. Is when he has those like last week, those high turnover games. So he hasn't had any of those against the Colts. So that's cool. The floor might be there, and honestly, I need that. So I might flip and put him back in there. But as of right now, yeah, I'm going to be going with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, my biggest issue on my lineup this week is I have buys. So I have 2 receivers on buys in Amon-Ra St. Brown and Bobby Trees. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do in my wide receiver spot because I have Chris Olave who may not play because of a concussion. And so at that point, I don't have another wide receiver. My other 2 wide receivers on my list are OBJ and Jameson Williams, who are not ready to play yet. I'm stashing those guys because I'm expecting bigger things down the road, which, again, if those guys are on your waivers, it's time to do that. That's my opinion.
But if you're in a certain situation, there's no way I can do it, but you can do it.
Yeah. So my receivers right now are Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, and Allen Lazard going in this week. Now I hear a lot of back and forth on Allen Lazard. I hear a lot of, he's not their number 1 guy. He's not that great of a receiver. Guys, he's averaging about 14 points a week right now. The weeks that he's played. He's scored a touchdown, I think, in 3 of the 4 weeks he's played. And the 1 week he didn't score, he had over 100 yards receiving. Now, Allen Lazard is out of the receivers right now. He is the number 1 ranked receiver on Green Bay. So everybody's talking about Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, even Randall Cobb from last week. Allen Lazard's given you the most consistency out of that. He's a wide receiver 3, and he's wide receiver 3 on my roster, and he's actually going to be playing as a flex spot going forward. I'm not sure why I'm getting a lot of feedback and flack about him, but he's averaging 14 points, and it's going to continue. I mean, Aaron Rodgers just said he wants to throw the ball a little bit more. I understand there's a lot of talent around there, a lot of young guys, but if you're having hesitation on Allen Lazard, depending on who, I mean, if you have just baller receivers and we're talking about like Justin Jefferson and other guy, on your roster, and you just don't have space for him, that's one thing. But if you're trying to make a decision on who needs to be your wide receiver 3, this guy is a wide receiver 3, almost a lock for 10 plus points every week, just because if he doesn't catch a touchdown, he's going to get receptions. And he's shown that every week so far he's played.
I mean, yeah, it's a 70% rostered I've seen in our league or in an NFL league. So I'm like, I was kind of weird on that. Like, he averages 14 points a game, but it's, to your point, the times he scores touchdowns, he doesn't really get a lot of catches or a lot of yards. He happens to score his touchdowns, so he's safe. The floor has been good, but is he going to sustain that? Is the question. That's maybe why people have been dropping him. I don't know why he would be on waivers. I mean, if I seen him on waivers, I'd pick him up, but he because of that safety, and he is the top option. You even seen on for that 4th and 2 that he tried to back shoulder Lazard there. It might have hit if it didn't get deflected at the line of scrimmage, but the safety is there. The touchdown, it's either the touchdowns or the yards. He hasn't had like a big game to think like, okay, I'm that dude. This is my spot. You've seen Dubes, you've seen flashes with him, you've seen flashes with Watson. But the safety, that dude Lazard, he's gonna be on the field like a lot, because even if he's not using it, he's like a hell of a blocker out there. He's blocking for dudes. They block for each other well, so he's gonna be on the field a lot, probably more than any receiver on the team. So yeah, he's kind of safe, but I understand why. Like, I'm not super high on him. I mean, I had him as a breakout guy. I thought he was gonna do more, but seeing the emergence of Dubes or Dobbs, and I'm just like, I don't know. He's not the receiver that I thought he would be. He's a hell of a football player, but he just doesn't have that game breaking ability.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not putting him in wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 conversations. I think that's unfair to the kid. I drafted him as my 4th receiver, and to me, he's actually beat out my expectations. And I mean, I'm very, very comfortable with playing him, and it's a big reason why my team is 5-0 is because I have a guy like that I can put in my flex, get me 14 points, and I'm very comfortable with it. So a lot of people, a lot of my friends, a lot of my, league mates, a lot of my family members are saying, oh, Allen Lazard. And guys, I'm a Vikings fan. If you can't tell, I'm a Vikings fan. Why am I playing a Packer? Why am I defending a Packer? It's because his average is there. And I truly believe he is Aaron Rodgers' number 1 guy. Everyone is trying to say, is he's going to fill Devontae Adams' shoes? I don't think that's fair. And I think we need to get rid of that notion and get rid of that, dialogue, because that's not fair. Sitting there saying Mecole Hardman is going to replace Tyreek Hill, that's not fair. This is what it is. It's a new offense. And, Allen Lazard, I also have Romeo Doubs this week because they are playing the Jets. So, I mean, if you have either one of those guys on your roster, you can keep playing them week after week after week, because the upside's there when Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback. The upside's there. So, I mean, that's my roster. But again, I'm on a bye, so I don't have a choice. The other question I have is my flex, and it keeps going back between Travis Etienne and Tony Pollard. Now these guys are neck and neck in points scored this year, and they're basically almost the exact same.
Right.
I think Tony Pollard is a little bit tougher, and he has a better chance of scoring rushing touchdowns. But it's almost the exact same situation. They're almost the exact same back. And this week, Etienne plays the Colts, and Pollard plays the Eagles. So it's like flip a coin. It's flip a
Oh,
coin, man. And
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. For me, because I know Pollard scored last week, and he's the better running back between the tackles pretty easily. But man, I was watching that Jags game, and seems like Etienne was starting to get going in the pass game a little bit. So if that's the case, he can get more catches. I know he's not going to have the same rushing, but the catches. Um, because they don't use Pollard enough in the pass game. They kind of like just rotate backs and just let them do their thing each. I think they should have them both on the field and utilize Pollard more in the pass game. They don't. But they do that with Etienne. So if he can get going, no, it's been a long, tough season. He's one of the biggest busts of the season is Travis Etienne. But this could be the week. So who are they playing? Oh, they're playing the Colts.
they're playing the Colts. So week 2, when
Those
they play the
receivers
Colts,
are going to get locked up outside. So, like, I could see a lot of checkdowns this week.
week 2 against the Colts, he scored 8.3. Nothing to cry home about. You drafted him as your RB2. You're hoping that he's in the top 25. Right now, he's sitting at, I think, like 30 or 32 as overall running backs. So, I mean, he had the upside to be something that you thought James Robinson the first couple of weeks was going to be. But you're starting to see Etienne get a little bit more involved in that offense. Like you already mentioned, he's getting a little bit more, and you want to see that uptick. You want to see him get a little bit more involved week by week because when it comes to week 13, 14, 15 in playoffs, now you have a guy who now is involved in the offense, and he's probably going to average you 15 to 18 points, hopefully a week. And that's what you're hoping for with a guy like this. Pollard is in a little bit different situation because Zeke is such a big name and he's been there for so long. It's going to be so hard to supplant Zeke. Even though he's outproducing Zeke, he averages 5.2 yards per carry, where Zeke is averaging like 3.9 yards per carry. It's not even close. Pollard is the better pass catching back. Zeke is the better blocker. He's the better pass protector, which I understand he needs to be on the field for that. Find out a way to get them both on the field and get the ball in your playmaker's hands, and that's where Tony Pollard will have value. I keep talking about Zeke, man. His value just keeps sinking and sinking every week. And he's a guy, if he's on your roster, and, I've talked about this last week. I talked about this with Chris in our league. It's time to get rid of him. I think it's time to get rid of Zeke and time to move on from it and see what you can get in return, because the longer you wait, the lower his value is.
Right. I mean, for me, between those two, though, Pollard and Etienne, I would go Etienne this week. Yeah. I know Pollard's been the better guy so far this year, but Etienne, I sense a little momentum. And like I said, those corners are going to be locking up those receivers, so I can see a lot of checkdowns.
He's averaging 5.9 yards per carry.
Yeah, he had a couple of nice runs too when I was watching that fucking game. I got a flex matchup or a question this week for me. Starting out right now, currently I have T. Higgins in there. Unless he gets a full, and honestly, if he practiced fully on Friday, it's pretty easy for me. He's going to be the guy. So it really comes down to Zay Jones, who I just haven't dropped yet because I have Trevor Lawrence, and if that stack can get going, it might be a little something because they show him flashes, and he's kind of the downfield guy. He could, man, I was watching that game. He had something go off his hand, so I haven't dropped him yet. So, but it's either him or Rachaad White. So it's some slim pickings at flex. Assume if Higgins goes down, and I'll tell you why I even mentioned Rachaad White. Rachaad White has been he had 40% snap share last week, and we were playing the Steelers. I could see the Buccaneers kind of beating up on the Steelers a little bit, and garbage points matter in fantasy. Your boy James Cook scored a touchdown against the Steelers. Backup running back on the Bills last week as they were able to run it up on them. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my thought process with Rachaad White. I know his projection is only like 7-8 points, but he gets like 5 targets a game the last 2 or 3 games. Tom Brady really likes him. I can see this being a week where Lenny doesn't get a very high usage rate, and Rachaad White kind of gets some snaps. So Rachaad White, to me, he's a guy that's worth talking about. He's a guy that is worth consideration as a flex. That's where he'd be in my lineup if he gets in. If T Higgins can't go, I'm honestly gonna go Rachaad White. I feel pretty good about that.
So yeah, dude, Rachaad White over Zay Jones, I would. And I don't look at projections when it comes to making decisions. I think NFL, it's the worst thing to go off projections. It's the worst thing to go off red and green matchups. It's the worst. Go with your gut. So Tampa's starting to get going, and I think that you want to start reading the tea leaves. I keep talking about tea leaves. I'm gonna trademark that shit. Tea leaves. Okay. This week, I think that Tampa's going to blow them out. I think it's going to be a blowout. Pickett's he's getting going. There's going to be a lot of turnovers in that game. You're right. I think this is a perfect game to kind of rest Lenny and let your young guys start getting in the flow of an offense. And I think that Tommy knows that. I think that the coaching staff knows that. I think this is a perfect week to get 10 to 15 points out of Rachaad White. And he might score, stuff like that. He's also the kickoff returner, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, maybe he breaks one on a kickoff return. He gives you 6 free points. Little things like that. Zay Jones played week 2 against Indy. They blew him out, and he got 5.3 points. So that's a tough matchup for him, even though his offense played well in week 2. And he started off hot, and now he's kind of died off a little bit, and he's kind of
he had 8 targets last week, and like I said, I was watching that game. There was he could have had like probably around 5 catches, like 60 yards, but they were tough catches, some good coverage. And speaking of that, it's not going to get easier this week with Gilmore and Kenny Moore. So I'm not the red matchup. They're actually the number 1 ranked defense against wide receiver is the Colts. So like I said, it's pretty easy right now. Rachaad White, I could potentially drop Zay Jones and go check out the waivers, but right now there's not a lot of guys out there in our league. We got a 12-man, 3 wide receiver league, so it's slim pickings.
Yeah, there's a couple guys on waivers that I would look at would be like Mecole Hardman would be a guy I would look at this week only because there's going to be so many points scored in that game. You go back to last year, man, and there was the last 3 minutes alone, there was 60 scores.
Last time they played, though, it was the Gabe Davis show.
It was the Gabe Davis show, but we're talking about the other side. It was also the Tyreek Hill show, and Tyreek Hill is no longer there. So I'm not going to sit here because I'm not going to contradict myself and say, hey, Mecole Hardman is the Tyreek Hill. No. All I'm saying is there's going to be targets to be had in this game. Mecole Hardman came MVS last week, had 15 points,
that's the one. MVS is the one.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they look for Travis Kelce in the end zone because it's almost automatic at this point. But Mecole Hardman, they look for him on sweeps and screens, and I think he's gonna to slow down that pass rush too. They're going to try to use some speed to slow down that pass rush. I think could be a Mecole Hardman game. So, I mean, like on our waiver, that would be a guy. I'm contemplating it because I may need a receiver. But, yeah, I mean, in a flex spot, that could be somewhere where you can go to if you get desperate. In my other league, I have a flex question, and this one has some options. So it's Devontae Smith is in my flex right now. So it's either going to be Devontae Smith against Dallas. It's going to be Monty against Washington. It could be Adam Thielen against Miami. Who else do I have down there? I have one more. Kyle Pitts if he plays. I'm going to probably go away from that one for now.
Yeah, for me, yeah.
And I have Miles Sanders against Dallas or Christian Kirk, which I don't think that's even an option. Jesus. I also have J.K. Dobbins on my bench. So, I mean, I have a pretty deep bench.
Lord. Yeah, your league doesn't know how to draft or assemble. Like, that is ridiculous. But, yeah, no, for me, Monty jumps out. Monty jumps out on that, dude. Like, for me, he had his first week back. He got all the volume right away. And the matchup, they're going against – I know it's Thursday, and honestly, I hate playing Thursday matchups, especially in a flex spot. You hate playing Thursday night guys, but it's Monty. He's pretty safe. I mean, I drafted him as my RB2 in my other league, so if you're flexing him, I mean, I feel good about it. He's my RB2 in my other league. and I feel totally fine about it. Like his projection is still pretty mild, but when he's healthy, like Khalil Herbert went bye this week. Montgomery got it all back. When he's there, he's a 3 down back. So for me, and the Washington, like I wouldn't be surprised to see him tomorrow night be the best player on the field, or next to it. Like to me, he's a guy that I would play. So that's me. I'm playing him in my other league. Speaking of my other league, my flex question in my other league is a guy just got off waivers, Jacoby Myers. He was my top waiver pickup this week in that league. I put in one for Kenneth Walker. Wasn't able to get him, but my second one was Jacoby Myers. And Jacoby, I'm going to flex him or Kareem Hunt. So this one they're actually playing in the same game. It's in Cleveland versus the Patriots. Kareem Hunt on one side versus Jacoby Myers on the other. Currently, I have Jacoby in. He has a slightly better matchup on paper. So yeah, and he has a higher projection. So on the projection says to go with Jacoby. He's coming off a monster game too, even with the quarterback Zappy. So, but he's clearly the target hog, right? To me, like I have him in there, so I'm kind of leaning towards him. Kareem Hunt, though, I love Kareem Hunt, man. He's coming off a touchdown week. We told your son Bryce to start him, and it paid off. He's a guy that if you hit on the right week is gonna be solid for you. So Kareem Hunt, could this be the week? So that's my kind of question. Kareem Hunt, Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, this one's actually kind of tough for me, man. The reason why is I can see this being a really, really big Ramondre Stevenson game. And I just think that they're going to break him loose, and there may not be as many targets as there was last week against a really bad Detroit team. Cleveland's a little bit better than Detroit defensively. So, I mean, I just think that the production won't be as high as it was last week. But Kareem Hunt, I mean, Nick Chubb is there, and Nick Chubb is RB1 or RB2. It depends on how your league is scored right now. And,
right.
Man, that's a tough one. I would probably go, being a PPR league, I would go Jacoby Myers. I think he's going to get enough targets, and when he gets targets, he gets catches. This guy has been wide open. It always seems like this guy's wide open his entire career. So he runs really crisp routes. He's actually a pretty tall, lengthy, fast dude. The one downside he had was touchdowns. Well, he started to catch touchdowns. So he's a pretty damn good receiver, man. And we talked about this, you and I, before the podcast, and I put him in wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range. That's the production you're getting out of him. He's kind of in that like Brandon Cooks range where he's surprisingly getting you.
I think he's gonna start drawing coverage. Like he might get a lot of Denzel Ward this week.
That's fine, but I mean, it's not like they can double him because they're gonna still be putting 7 and 8 in the.
They move him around too. He plays inside. He plays outside. Yeah. He's got decent size. He can run after the catch. That dude, he's a pretty good good player, dude. I'm happy to get him. So
yeah. I talked
dude,
myself into being. That's my answer, Jacoby Myers.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you. So far, unless we got someone to persuade me about Kareem Hunt, but right now I'm pretty set on Jacoby. That answers, I mean, my flex questions. We went over some trade stuff. If you guys have any questions about your lineup, make sure you let us know. Staying on Jacoby Myers, though, I know you talked about maybe offering to trade for him. That's how high we feel about him. And there's some other guys that we might want to, like we can't work the waivers, and it's week 6, so you might have to start making some moves via trade. I started the show with the trade. That was one that went down. I actually already made a trade. I acquired Chris Godwin. Yeah, I'm a Bucks fan, but I also feel like it was the time to kind of buy low and go get a guy that I feel like can obviously improve my roster and help my chances. And I still feel good about it. So he's a guy I know that people maybe should target. Jacoby Myers is a guy that looks like we should target. Anybody else?
Yeah, Cam Akers. Cam Akers is the guy you want to go buy low on right now. And let me tell you why. his matchups coming up are actually pretty good. Carolina this week, I think, is a get-right game for this offense. I think that Cam Akers is about to put up a 15 to 20-point week. Mike, you dropped him too early. Okay. I think this is a week. I mean, I know whoever has a number one waiver, Cam Akers is a guy that's worth a number one waiver. Going forward, he's starting to produce a little bit more each week. He's producing a little bit more each week. Last week he had 13 rushes to Darrell Henderson's 0. 13 rushes is Darrell Henderson's 0. Now Darrell Henderson did have 4 targets. He had 3 catches for 60 yards, something like that. So Darrell Henderson did outscore him. But when going forward, when you start seeing how many touches they're getting per game, that's
crazy.
That's not going to continue.
13 carries to 0 carries, and you get outscored.
You get outscored
by 3 catches.
Yeah. So I mean that happened. It happened in Jacksonville.
But the usage rate, is a telling sign for sure. I totally get what you're saying, and I agree. Like that's he actually got dropped in our league. Mm-hmm. And he's on the waivers right now. There might be some guys putting in a waiver. There might not be. We're going to see how that goes here in a couple of days.
But, I offered a trade for him last week. I mean, I was throwing out a feeler trade. I was offering like Robert Woods. I was offering a flex receiver. I would offered Alan Lazard for him. Honestly, I think that there's a little bit, and we just talked about how I feel about Alan Lazard.
Yeah,
a middle of the road receiver for a buy low candidate like that, I think was pretty fair. But I think Cam Akers is going to get going, and he's the guy. Like people are talking about having Darrell Henderson and having both of them. That's just kind of you're shooting yourself in both feet there because you can't hold roster spots. It only works out if one gets hurt. But anyway, Cam Akers I think is a buy low candidate. If he's on waivers, go get him. If he's on a roster, go trade for him. Jacoby Myers is one that I would pay a little bit more for. I like that kid too. I think he's actually a pretty good receiver. Another one that you could talk about would be Travis Etienne as another buy low candidate. He's not produced yet to your liking or to his owner's liking. That's another one. The biggest name that I have that you can go trade for right now and you're going to produce, if you can wait this long, if you're in a luxury position, is Najee Harris. Najee Harris is the biggest name he's probably the biggest letdown. Him and Kyle Pitts are probably the 2 biggest letdowns of fantasy so far. Now he's still averaging 10 points, but if you look at his matchups down the road, if you look in December and who he's playing, mostly at home in Pittsburgh, they're all green. It's all ready to rock, man. And the weather's going to start getting bad and start getting cold. That's when he's going to start making his money. So, John, if you're listening, man, I would offer you a trade, but if you're listening to me, you're going to up the price on me. But if anybody offers you a trade, I would actually probably hold on to him a little bit longer. You're in a position to hold on to him. But if you don't have him and you need a running back, Najee Harris is the guy to go get. Because I'm telling you right now, his owner's probably sick of him and sick of not getting the 20, 25 points that he wanted. And his price might be a little bit lower.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was on John's bench last week, and it paid off. John had one of the highest scorers in the league without Najee, so he's definitely a guy. I got the last one, Jonathan Taylor. He might be a guy that the asking price isn't what it was. He was the number 1 overall pick in probably 95% of leagues. So, but he definitely, I think he's like in the 30s as far as I know. He missed last week. He hasn't practiced so far this week. His owners, depending on what situation they're in, they might be sick of him as well. So that he might be another guy that you can buy low on. So it's the time, man. It's week 6.
I had the second pick in my draft, and Jonathan Taylor went first overall. And I actually kind of celebrated because I ended up picking up Austin Eckler, and I drafted Austin Eckler in the number 2 spot over Christian McCaffrey, over Derrick Henry, over everybody else. And I think Eckler right now is probably the most valuable back in fantasy because he does everything. Now they're talking about Joshua Kelly kind of biting into that a little bit. I think he scored a touchdown last week, but Eckler's still scoring, and he's starting to get it going. He got 30, 35, and that trend's going to continue. Jonathan Taylor, not only is he injured, but that offense just is not what it was last year. The offensive line is not dominating. There's Quentin Nelson, but he's the
That's
one
about it.
outlier. He's the one outlier on that offensive line. But for whatever reason, I mean, they're just not getting it going. There's not holes to be filled. He's going to have his games. He's going to have his 20-point games.
Right. The usage, Jonathan Taylor's usage is going to be too high, and he's a really talented back. The offensive line that we thought was good turns out isn't being so good. I mean, Matt Ryan has no time to get the ball downfield. So, but yeah, Jonathan Taylor, that was a good one. So yeah, these are some guys that we feel like. You got any other guys or?
I had one more question because I had a question from my friend Mario at work. He asked me Geno Smith or Joe Burrow this week. And Geno Smith is actually coming on, man. And I picked him up as a backup quarterback because I have Jalen Hurts. Now, if you have one of these top 4, like maybe Justin Herbert, top 5 consensus quarterbacks, Geno Smith may not have that much value to you. But I have Jalen Hurts coming up in a bye in a couple of weeks, or maybe even next week. I'm not sure where his bye is, and I needed a quarterback. I would start Geno this week against Arizona. I absolutely would. And he's starting to look deep. He made an incredible throw to Noah Fant last week, and he's moving to his left, off balance, and just dime. And then another ball to Tyler Lockett that was just a dart. And I even posted in our group thread. I said, "Man, that was a dart by Geno," and everybody's like, "Oh, shut up, fuck it." That was one of the best throws of the year, and nobody's even talking about it.
I was pissed because I was going against Tyler Lockett. I don't want to hear that shit.
Yeah, this guy is just money right now, and he's making Russ and Denver and Nathaniel Hackett look terrible because Geno is outplaying Russell Wilson. It's not
that's funny that's the decision he's got to make right there, because in our league, dude's got the same. He's got Geno in over Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford actually has a pretty good matchup this week against Carolina. So the Geno hype train is rolling for sure, and he's got the matchup Arizona, like they're. And we talked about Detroit a few weeks ago. I know last week they kind of laid an egg, but Detroit, we said how they can score points, but their defense gives up a lot of points. It's looking like the similar situation going in Seattle, because their defense can't. It's hard to stop people, but Geno has got some wide receivers, and he can make some plays with his arm apparently. So Geno Smith, man, like they might be in some high scoring games, so he might be forced to throw a ton. So he might be putting up a ton of fantasy points. And right now, I'm in agreement with you, man. I'd go Geno.
Yeah, I had this conversation last night with, again, my friend Mario from work. I said, hey, anybody, because he ended up picking Geno up off waivers. I'm like, how is Geno still on waivers? I don't understand. But he got him off waivers, and he's like, well, would you start him? I said, I would start him. I would play him. I would ride this wave. Joe Burrow, of course, can get it going, but he's probably gonna be without T. Higgins for a week or two. That offense doesn't seem like it's.
Come on, T. Come on, T.
Hey, what happened to your? I don't play questionable players. That's my new.
Hey, if he's Friday, we're gonna see, and that's true. If he has a questionable tag going in the game, I'll go Rachaad White, no problem at all. I'll do that. But if he's a full practice on Friday and he has a no injury designation, then yeah, he's gonna go. So there's still hope. Come on, T.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's the one question that I have, and I think that's a pretty damn good question because everybody wants to relive Joe Burrow and last December and January, and that's not how he's playing right now. It's just not how that offense is humming, and they have a really tough matchup. They're in New Orleans. Jamar Chase is going to be seeing a lot of Marshawn Lattimore, so this could be a Joe Burrow trap game, even though he's going home, he's going to New Orleans, he's going, back to Louisiana where he'd love to play in that Superdome. But I don't think this is the week. I don't think that this is a good week to play him. So you're like we say, you're chasing the Seahawks, you're chasing the Lions, you're kind of chasing the Cardinals a little bit too. So if you have options in that game as well or against those teams, they're just terrible on defense and they're letting up a lot of points. Or the Raiders, if you are playing against the Raiders, that's another one that they're giving up a lot of points too. So there's my answer there. One last thing I want to get into only real quick, because this was a pickup that I had. Somebody asked me out of waivers. was about Benjamin and how I actually feel about him this week. I feel strong about him this week.
Yeah, this is the week. This is the week that you want to play him.
Yeah, he's projected like 13 points on NFL. James Conner, I think, is probably going to sit this week. Darrell Williams might even sit this week. So volume alone will be there, and he's a pass catcher in that offense. Again, chase the Cardinals, chase teams because they're going to be high-scoring games. So he may not be a big name, and you may not feel comfortable with him, but this is the week. This is the week to do it, and hopefully he builds some momentum, and maybe you can keep him on your roster and flex him. So that's that was the last little question I had.
Right. That covers our lineup questions, and those of our followers' lineup questions that subscribed and let us know and asked the question. So if you guys have any more, make sure, like I said, subscribe. Who's in your flex this week? Buys just getting started right now, so we gotta really dig deep sometimes. Like I said, Rachaad White is kind of a deep sleeper for me. I think he's gonna have a solid week. So if you guys are in need of some deep sleepers or just have a difficult decision like my other one, Jacoby Myers, Kareem Hunt. So whether it's deep sleepers, we do DFS also. Like I said, make sure you guys subscribe. Let us know how your lineup's looking.
All right. Until next time, A2D.